is that the definition of slow play hasn't changed. You can go back and look at slow play as defined by the IPG all the way back to 2009, 2008, 2005, and aside from verbiage, it's about the same. Basically, a player plays slowly. So apparently, they think that definition is as good as it's going to get because they haven't changed it. A couple of things, though. If a judge doesn't believe a player is intentionally playing slow, this is where we talk about the other thing, where it's not slow play, it is stalling. That's where the player is intentionally making a decision to abuse the clock and abuse the tournament system to gain an advantage. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Also, interestingly enough, as it says there, it's also slow play if a player continues to execute a loop. So basically, if you've executed some type of infinite loop or a loop that you can do as many times as you want, and you don't have a way out of it, or you can't determine, I want to do this 1,000 times, I want to do this 1,000,000 times, I want to do this twice. You can't just sit there and, okay, I'm going to tap this and untap this. Tap it and untap it. I'm going to tap it and untap it again. Opponent's like, well, how many times do I do that? Well, I don't know. I'm going to keep doing it. You can't do that. That also would be considered slow play. Any questions so far? Slide, James. So the question is, why do we as judges care about slow play? I mean, right? What do we care about? Well, what's up?
Oh, no, I thought it was a question.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Oh, because it makes tournaments go longer, and that's not good for player experience or judge experience.
Correct. So, anything else? My screen? Anybody?
Just the rounds are time.
The rounds are time, right? So we're all sharing this pool of minutes, which is usually 50 minutes at most tournaments. And, you know, time, at least as judges, in my opinion, time is money, right? You're being, paid to be there. Players are also paying to be there, so they all want to get through as quickly as possible. So if you're, playing slowly, you're abusing the system and you're causing everybody time and money and draining it out of their life. Anything else? Anybody think of anything else other than the three things I have up there? Tim?
It's a trigger.
It's a trigger?
Yeah, you can take off your opponent.
Okay. I don't know if we have judges care if you tick off your opponent so much as
you do if your opponent causes a disruption.
Sure, if it gets into a disruptive problem, yeah. We have players all over the world, especially in Kentucky, that are really good at ticking off their opponents. And, there's really nothing we can do about that. I mean, I could drop some names, but a lot of you guys judge around here, you know who I'm talking about. I mean, no. Anyway, slide, please, Chief. So what is not slow play? Well, the first thing there is stalling. Stalling is totally different. Like I said, it's not slow play. We'll mention that, talk a little bit more in depth about that later. Anybody else tell me something that is not slow play? No? All right.
Deliberate actions. Like they're not slow play. I want to say, like Gabriel Nassif takes an extraordinarily long amount of time between his plays, but he's not playing slow. He's formulating his next play, 3 plays, 4 plays. He doesn't normally get caught on it because it's not, he thinks about it, he takes a little longer than most players, but it's not an extraordinarily long amount of time.
Sure, I mean, if you go into the tank for 15, 20 seconds, that's not slow play. If you go into the tank for 15, 20 seconds at reaction, that is slow play.
Correct.
I still have some stuff about unsportsmanlike conduct here, just so nobody got on the wrong page there. Again, it's an unsporting penalty that's not a tournament error, and that is a DQable offense, and again, we'll talk about that later. We're focusing on slow play. So anybody else have any other things that would not be slow play that, yes, men?
Being late to a match.
Being late to a match is definitely slow play. Usually we
that's tardiness.
write that up as tardiness, but it does affect the structure of the tournament and everybody else's day and how long it takes, so that is a problem.
Another thing that would not be slow play is, or at least I wouldn't think it is taking longer than normal on dexterity. Like if the player, for instance, has like a hand injury or something like that, and they can't shuffle or search their deck as quick as somebody who doesn't have that.
We're getting into a little bit of a gray area now. You're talking about physical disabilities we actually might have to account for. Like, I know there's a couple of players, one of them brings a family member to shuffle for him. So, we've got to be careful about giving slow play for, physical injuries. What's up, James?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've been in a number of events where I've been asked to basically be the shuffle person for.
Yeah, I mean, if they're really if they have a physical disability and they can't shuffle and they don't have anybody to help shuffle, probably a good idea as a judge just to offer to shuffle for them.
And for the record, she has, well, he and therefore her have received for that.
Oh, okay.
So they actually have.
So that actually is they have. Okay.
Yes, they have. What happened was she was supposed to shuffle, and then she was confused at what's going on, and she didn't understand what she was supposed to be shuffling for him, and there was a bit of miscommunication between the two of them, and it took too long, and then they just, since it was in time, they called the slow play warning. It was the discussions like, do we give it to her or to him? But no, you give it to him. It's his slow play work still. But it never happened again. It was just, but it needed to happen, so it did happen.
She just got distracted and forgot to shuffle.
Yeah. It was a bit of a
Yeah.
I was always
there's no there is some leeway. There are limits. There's no infinite thing.
Well, yeah, you can't just search your library forever, but
I was always impressed at how his family members could stay involved in the game because they obviously don't know anything about the game, but they, I would be asleep halfway through the game.
She knows a lot about the game.
Well, now they do. Yeah. Okay. Anything else before I move to the next slide?
I mean, taking a majority of the time between players, a player can be moving through their actions very quickly, but if they're storming off, they're still gonna they're gonna need to take more time, even if they're going through their actions very quickly.
Interesting. Storm is one of the scenarios I stole, so we'll get to that. That's true. Yeah, if you're just making sure you got it correct and you do it in a timely fashion is the whole point. I mean, as long as it appears that you're doing the best you can to get something done, then it's not slow play.
yeah, that's what I was trying to get at with you're searching your library for a card.
Right. All right, so we're going to go to the next slide, which does talk about what else is not slow play. So poor strategy. That is not slow play. Players can be, they can choose strategies that may not seem optimal, and that is their prerogative. Such as not taking obvious avenues of advancement. I mean, if they have an overrun in hand and that could win the game and they fail to play it, that's not slow play. I mean, they can fail to play, the game correctly or, the way that we think it is. It's not us to judges to decide how they should play the game, as long as they're moving the game along at a reasonable pace. Also, not understanding the game or how their deck works or how to win, as long as they're doing something with it. I said how their deck works. If they don't know how their deck works, they're probably going to slow play at some point. But as long as they're trying to make some type of,
So as long as they're advancing the board state.
as long as they're advancing the board state, it's not in a loop.
Right.
Then yeah, that's not slow play. You can totally just sit there and have no idea what you're doing, or you can sit there and draw the game out as long as you're moving along. I have in my own notes here that clouds are allowed to suck. They're allowed not to be good at the game. We all can't be pet shaped. So,
What about then just draw going? Even though they have creatures and they have cards in their hand and they're just not doing anything, they're just draw go. And
that would be the opposite of slow play, in my opinion. I don't care if they got 100 creatures. If I draw go.
Are you saying that they take a while to make the decision to draw go?
Yeah, they're just drawing a card, looking, and then say go, and they're not advancing the board state.
They have creatures they could attack.
They have creatures they could attack. They have spells that could advance the board state, but it looks like I guess it's almost stalling.
Because 60 turn mills.
I feel like
Well, it depends on how long it takes between draw and go. If I draw and 30 seconds later, then yeah, they slow play, right? But if I draw 5 seconds go and I don't do anything, again, sure, a full swing might win the game for them, but maybe we can't make them make that play, James.
Yeah, it's still advancing the game state, not the board state. They'll need to actually put out something new.
What about if it like you said, if it's a matter of day one, game one, it's
okay.
7 minutes left. They're just like draw go. the board state is stalled out to where.
So wouldn't that be considered like actual stall tactic because they're still like passing the turn? It's going to be like pressing through the drift.
I would kind of say
investigation, and we'll get to that. Stalling will totally depend on what your investigation comes up with.
Okay, the one thing you got to remember is part of slow play is the fact that you're denying your opponent a chance to do something.
Ding, ding, ding.
If you're saying draw go, you're giving them opportunity to do things. That's not really slow play anymore.
And I've seen your scenario that you're talking about. I've actually seen happen, and where you talk to the player afterwards. Why are you giving your opponent all these options when you had lethal?
Yeah.
After the game's over, it's like I didn't know I had lethal.
Yeah.
You swing out, you've got lethal.
Right.
And the only reason I got into the question was the opponent was like, "Why did this guy let me win?"
Yeah.
Like, isn't that slow play or isn't that like some kind of offense? And he was mad.
But mine was more of the less amount of time where you end up in like you're at 3 minutes and they draw go you into turns because they know you can't beat them.
Okay.
I won game one.
That's probably investigations.
Yeah, we would investigate
Well, if they're draw going, then they're giving you opportunities to come back.
Still have the opportunity.
In a vacuum, draw go is not slow play because they're putting it all on you. It's all yours.
Okay. Yeah, that's like you said. I've seen that situation several times, and it happened to myself.
That might get back to the first part of ticking people off too, because that apparently ticked the opponent who won off.
Yeah.
As long as they're like drawing and going at like a reasonable amount of time, it's not like what Ben said. It's like draw my card, look at it for 30 seconds, go. That is probably stalling.
We'll get Trevor here before I move to the next slide. What's up?
It's basically just the same thing he said. I think the whole crux of that scenario is how long it takes between draw and go.
Yeah, right. The length time between draw and go is paramount here. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, it's all on the opponent. He's just giving it all to him. 15 seconds, we might call. We might give a caution or call slow play. Okay, we're going to move to the next slide and talk about what actually is slow play. Things that matter. So obviously, we talked about this already, excessive or prolonged shuffling. Not necessarily if it's disability, but if you got all day to shuffle, it just seems like that, shuffling's your favorite thing to do, then yeah, I mean, that's a slow play. Obviously, the tap on tap I talked about. Obviously, too much time between game actions. Going into the tank, you talked about the player, Gabriel. Going into the tank, like I said, every now and again, 15, 20 seconds, something like that, it's fine. Players that look like they're, naming their firstborn every action, then yeah, we need to call that slow play penalty. Excessive table talk with no actions. Again, we have players everywhere, but also here, I'm sure you know, that's really good at table talk. If they do that long enough, then that's slow play. You need to give that warning or caution. Yeah.
With table talk, is that something you're going to catch more, like if you're standing around watching games, or have you had seen players complain to their opponents talking to?
Both. So I get players coming up to me, hey, this guy, player X, can you watch him? All he does is talk. They'll do that, and then also, you can, if you're watching your event, like if it's a smaller event or you're watching your section at a GP, you can tell, if the player's just talking too much. If you see a player just talking all the time, just go closer to that match and see what's he talking about. Is it his turn when he's talking? Should he be making game plays while he's doing that? Check it out. And if he's talking on the opponent's turn, okay. But if it's his turn, it's slow play.
Yeah. So if there's an actual, you're still making actions for the rest of the board game, but you just talk the entire time. Is that considered?
If you're really good at multitasking and you can just go off on a conversation and still run the game, then good on you. That's fine.
I just didn't know if you went to a judge afterwards and you said that, and then they went and watched and they're still making it.
Usually if a player comes to you and says, hey, I think this guy's slow playing, you have to watch it next round and see what happens. And he may be totally different next round.
Oh, okay. So they
both. And obviously not focusing on the game and excessive bluffing. I mean, yeah, Tim.
I know you wouldn't call it slow playing, but what would you call it when you have a player that's talking during the opponent's turn in an attempt, in an apparent attempt to confuse them?
Depends on how deep it gets. I mean, like I said, you have players that are really good at that.
I would imagine if the players ask the person to stop copying and they don't respect that. Like,
Can I ask my opponent not to talk to me?
Right, that's what I'm saying. You can ask them to cut some of the excessive politely.
Exactly. You're expected to communicate with your opponent. I mean,
that's why I said you can ask them to cut excessive chat.
Well, I do that a lot. Like you try to get in your opponent's head, like, yeah, you can go ahead and play that counter straw. I don't care. No, seriously, go ahead, man. You're fine.
I seen two friends at the finals of a PPTQ. They rode together, whatever, and he owned, I'm not going to say the names, but he owned his buddy because he just started talking about a past relationship that he was dealing with. Totally making it plays in a timely fashion, but he just started in like, I'm going to use fake names like, yeah, man, what Mary did to you, and you know, I mean, I can't, well, you know, and just kept making these plays, you know, and he was talking, and a lot of times it was on his turn. And by the time it was over, I thought the guy was going to like go in the bathroom and, you know, head on to the next life. I mean, it was bad, and that guy ultimately won.
At what point does that enter unsporting conduct, unsporting conduct, unsportsmanlike conduct, I guess?
Well, the unsportsmanlike conduct is a totally different presentation, but they all have very
well, I'm saying like
specific.
Just talk, like for your example, like bringing up past relationships to intentionally put your opponent under stress. Is that not
as long as he does it in a respectful manner, doesn't use any, you know, degrading language or whatever?
Yeah, it's not like degrading language, but it's like.
I agree with that.
How can you do that in a respectful manner?
The IPG doesn't have a rule that says don't be a dick.
It kind of does though. If you're intentionally hostile but not like yelling, like say for example, like my opponent's grandfather just died, I was like, man, there was a sweet grandpa, and just like was intentionally prodding it, like something like that to invoke a reaction.
So what I would say there is in this case the guy didn't say anything. He just totally drank the Kool-Aid and let it happen. But basically if you know you say something about my past relationship and I'm like, hey man, we're playing this game, can you not talk about that? And in a finals, the judge is going to be right there anyway.
Right.
And then, you know, if he continues, then I would say, hey man, you need to stop this line of banter and play the game. And you know,
right. Okay.
And if they don't, then you got a different issue.
So it's on the opponent to say like, please don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, not
something that's bothering him, you know.
Yeah. Right.
But like I said, if he gets to the unsportsmanlike side,
discussion is probably a longer discussion.
Yeah.
I didn't want a tangent. I just was curious.
Like I said,
What would that be classified under if it didn't get to that situation?
That would be unsportsmanlike conduct.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
I don't know if I'm sure there's another slide, but
for
this happens a lot, especially at bigger events. But end of round discussions about concessions or draws. Like if you're in turns, you know, you've been there, players are at like turn 5 and it's gonna be the end of turns and there's like, do you want to concede? Like I think I'm ahead on board, blah blah blah. Like those topics,
timely fashion, as long as they're within the scope of the IPG, if they're done in timely fashion.
I know eventually judges will be like, I need you guys to sign a slip. So I'm assuming if they refuse to, or not refuse, but like continue to discuss, it could be a slow play warning.
If they did, but I've never had anybody not sign the slip. I mean, they'll give a couple of, are you sure you don't want to do it, and then they'll sign. But if they just refuse, then we'd have it.
Here's a question about the excessive bluffing.
Sure.
What's excessive bluffing?
So I got my hand here, and it's obvious that if I have a pump spell, the game is over, and let's say if I attack this guy and I got a pump, well, it's over for you, man. Make sure you don't want to just go ahead and concede. Sure. Because I got 5 cards in my hand. One of these is an overrun, right? Or stuff like that. And then the opponent's sitting there quietly and just waiting for you to shut up. So
you see this a lot with blue players. Let me think about countering that.
Yeah.
No, you can go ahead. I don't want. And it's all lands in hand.
Yeah. Or they'll sit there and they'll look forever. They'll look forever if they have a counter, and then they'll be like, okay, opt. And then it's forever. Right. Yeah. So that would be excessive bluff.
Yeah. So that's like you have to know the context of their hand. But does that not give any information to the players? Like if they said the blue player is taking 20 seconds every time his opponent casts a spell to bluff against a counter spell. Slow play. Okay. Even though that does they could give information away to the opponent because it's like. It would be slow play if they had a counter spell.
It would be slow play if they had a counter spell.
It would be both.
It doesn't matter what he has in his hand.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what's in his hand.
The word bluffing. I mean,
okay, got it.
Only you as a judge.
We shouldn't be looking at their hand to determine if they're slow playing. It should be a outside looking in.
That's what I was curious about.
Really realizing
there can be, what's in their hand, can help you, get the slow play. So like if he's got 2 lands in his hand and he's taking forever to make a decision, then you know what I'm saying? He has nothing to think about.
The key, not to belabor this too far. Yeah. The key is you don't reveal what's in their hand.
Right.
And
I was wondering if a slow play warning could potentially he's giving me a warning because he doesn't have anything in his hand.
That's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
There's no set amount of time that's considered slow play. So players don't have a metric. Well, that was 14 seconds. That's below the sloping metric. So they don't. You're not leaking information to them by giving a slow play.
Okay, gotcha.
Because there is no. It's entirely subjective to the judge on the call at
And
the time.
the other
whether
player
you're
could
slow
assume
play.
that you've been watching him and he's
Yes.
been doing this for the whole time. You're like,
Even
okay.
previous turn, even previous rounds.
Yeah, the previous round you were taking too long. This round you're doing this. You're starting to do the same thing twice.
Okay.
I mean,
So you're not leaking anything
Okay,
to
that's
them.
what I was concerned about. At the end of the day, it's still up to him to decide what he thinks your actions mean. And
Yeah.
he's not a mind reader. He's not psychic, probably.
Yeah.
So, let's move on to the next slide, which is how do you recognize slow play? So you're in your tournament and you're not sure if it's slow play or not. Some things that you can just key in on immediately to know if it's slow play. So you go up to a match. Can you tell whose turn it is? Who's the active player? If you can't, you might start watching for slow play. It's obvious who the player is, and obviously game actions are happening. You're good to go. Can you determine what they should do or what play you would make? If you've been watching the game for a few minutes and you know, okay, this turn he needs to play a land, play this creature, and attack with this creature, this planeswalker. If you can figure that out and he's still in the tank, then it's probably slow play. Are you bored? You're watching the match and you wish you were somewhere else because nothing's happening. Then that's slow play. Another thing that a lot of people don't go with, but I think is good enough. If you think it's slow play, or even you're thinking maybe it's slow play, probably is. Because like James said, there's no. Some judges will say, "Well, I count to 10, or I count to 15, or whatever." That's fine if that's what you do. You have to make your own thing up, but there's no set parameter for determining what slow play is, other than it's a judgment call. It's one of the few things in Magic that actually is a true judgment call. We got the comp rules for everything, but this is actually something where you get to make your own decision. And also, if you're not sure if it's slow play or not, watch the match. Watch the match over a few turns. Is he constantly slower than his opponent? Is he moving slower than the other players around him? Probably a good idea to start looking at slow play at that point. We're going to move on a little quicker here. Next slide, talk about how do we handle slow play problems. First thing I do, where it says the slow play caution is your friend, I always give the players a caution. Before I just jump into that warning, something along the lines of, hey, can you pick up the pace a little bit? I'm going to give you a caution, let you know you're not playing quick enough. Do that where it's non-disruptive, but get it in there. That way you don't just walk in and slam down a slow play warning. That gets players. You just boom, slow play. Also, issue the penalty again. It's a warning when it's least disruptive to the match. If he's been slow playing and he just now started, moving back into a reasonable pace, don't stop the match there to issue the slow play warning. Wait till he's finished the line of play, get the slow play warning in there, and move on and do it the reasonable pace. If you're not the head judge, if you're at a big tournament and you're appealed, make sure that you have the players continue to play while you fetch the head judge, because there's no reason for them to delay the game further. And also, probably a good idea to know if you're not the head judge and you issue a slow play, a good percentage you'll probably be appealed. Been my experience that people don't like to be given slow play one. Again, we talked about this already. Remember not to give away information or strategy. Just keep your game face on too. You don't want to reveal anything the player has in the hand or anything like that. Also remember that this is a TE, a tournament error. It's not a gameplay error. So the second violation of slow play is a game loss, not the third. I already said this, but you will get appealed if you're not the head judge. And also remember that extra turns. If you give a slow play warning in a match and it does go to turns, and instead of 5 extra turns, well, in general, if we're on a 5 extra turn format, it'll be 2 extras, so 7 total. How am I doing for time here?
About 20 minutes.
Oh, I just realized that's what you're. Thanks. Okay. That's awesome. Thank you. All right.
It's like I'm doing this.
I know, right? All right. Well, I'm gonna have James pull up that scenario. And while we're doing that, anybody have anything to say about handling, Jenna?
Well, I just wanted you to go over the last bit again, the remind the players of extra turns. Are you saying that if you call it a slow play that they get 2 extra turns if the game goes to turns?
Correct.
Is that per player?
No.
So, for example, if player A and player B both have gotten a slow warning in this game, Is it 9 extra turns or just 7?
No, it would be 7.
Okay.
You can't just continue to get slow play. Because remember, the second one,
Well, I know
you
the
get the
second
game
one
loss
is a game loss, but I'm saying, like, say we're playing, I got a warning for slow play, and then like, a few turns later, you got one for slow play. Then we go to turns, it's only something 7, not 9.
Correct.
Okay.
It's always going to be 7 there, I'm pretty sure. I think Min's checking me. I don't think we can go out to like 9, 11, 13.
Well, 11 and 13 would make sense because it'd be the second warning for that player, but I was thinking if each one received one, that would be the maximum number of
9, so
warnings.
if each one got a slow play, could it be 9 turns?
Yeah.
I don't
Yes,
know.
I believe so.
Min says so. We'll
I
go
believe,
with
I
that.
believe it is 2 extra turns per one. But mind you, they can't go any further than that.
Do you think it's 9 too? Just, okay.
Yeah. So you can't go further than that because you receive a
never seen that.
upgrade.
I don't think I've ever seen it, but I've seen 7. I've never seen 9.
I have had one
That's
player
how we-
call slow play on the other,
Yeah.
and you end up giving
Especially
the one that
because I would
called
assume that
slow play
players
on
like
the
that
other
might be
the
defensive,
slow
like-
play.
Yeah, like player A calls a judge on player B for slow play.
And you give the slow play to player A.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, we watch him, he's slow, he's like, I'm slow, you're slow. And then they both get a warning for it.
Jump that to 17 minutes, 19 seconds, James.
17 minutes, okay.
I got one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the only thing I disagree with, or what they even say rather, is instead of doing a heuristic of 20 seconds every time, it's you can keep track of the game. Like a player's formulating a plan, you get more leeway on that. Like especially starting hand, for example, it's probably reasonable to say more 30 seconds a minute. Or like if they draw a spell like a dig through time type of card, and then they tank on that, and then after resolving their hand or that spell, then they play quickly. Versus
Well, that's where watching it over multiple turns comes into play.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So the one thing about slow play you have to be very careful about is slow play depends on the fact that only so much information is gained every turn. You draw one card, that's one little bit of information that's every turn. If you do something that drastically changes the game, like dig through time, you looked at 7 cards. That's a lot of information. They need a little more time to process this. If you, I don't know, Warp World the game, and you want to play Commander, you Warp World, the game state just completely changed. They need some more time than normal to process this. So think about how much information is gained each turn, and then figure out what is a reasonable amount of time frame. So that's something to very much remember when you think about slow play.
So players should be expected to be building on their knowledge instead of reevaluating the game every turn.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually,
That's a good way to look at it.
Jack's comment.
That's why we don't have a set time frame.
Right. Jack's comment actually made me think of there are certain players like PV who are known for batch thinking, where they basically at the beginning of their turn they think of everything they're going to do during the turn, and then their time between actions is very small. But they might take like 45 seconds after they draw their card, and then be like, okay, I know everything I'm going to do, and then they just go. There's no time between their actions basically. Like they're like, okay, attack this, and then go. So is that something where you have to watch over the course of the game to determine if they're batch thinking or if they're just like tanking on one specific thing?
Yeah, really.
Okay.
And again, judgment call. You can make a judgment call here. So it's up, it's up to the game state and what you think. We're gonna watch some scenarios here. I have where I stole this from. This is from a judge in Tacoma, Washington. He did this seminar and he had these guys do some scenarios. This one is a Storm player. We're just gonna do these scenarios in case some judges, some of you guys aren't, seeing tournaments every weekend. So just get some ideas of what it actually looks like. And does this have sound?
Yeah, I believe it does. I'm paused. You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. So we'll watch this scenario.
What you got? Mantage cards? Sure. Alright, Nippon Nexus, Mutagenic Growth, Mutagenic Growth, Blighted Agent, Might of Old Croza. Does that kill me next turn? Still no. Okay. Alright. Draw card. Storm counts 1. Slide a hand. Bottom top. Desperate
Wait, look at your hand.
3 red mana. What is 1, 2, 3? Storm's 3. Metamorphose blue.
Alright, that's good enough, James. You can pause it. And run it to 39:53 and pause it. So everybody's having a chance there to see what was going on there and understand. So what do we see?
If that was like a new player that like Storm like that before, would you opt in for them doing that?
We don't care if they're new or pro.
So if this is an FNM, say
if it's an FNM, then totally different. There is no soul play.
Yeah, there's no. Okay.
You know, have to figure it out. You know, what do we see, Trevor?
I think that definitely falls under like they don't know how their deck works. They're counting everything.
I don't know if you could hear it or not. He was counting everything. It's hard to tell in that one whether he doesn't know how his deck works or if he's just trying to be incredibly precise. But he definitely is a new Storm player. And because eventually he gets there and he actually asks his opponent, "What's my Storm count?" I didn't let it get that far, but because he goes on for a while there.
Well, if he does he not have it with the dice?
He lost. He loses count.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't increment the dice every time.
He was counting his graveyard.
Yeah.
I think the individual like dexterity elements of it were killing every time because he went cast the spell. He did give it a few seconds to respond, which is fine. But then he waited a few seconds, got the dice for the storm count, waited a few seconds, got the mana, a few seconds, put the card in the graveyard, and that's what was really adding up there.
Well, in modern, because I'm assuming this is a modern match.
It is a modern match.
Okay, in modern, assuming the guy's tapped out.
Yeah, he's F6 here. He has no cards.
He's tapped. Yeah, he was tapped out with 3 lands. Didn't have enough cards in his graveyard to delve out anything. He was just done. So there's no reason to go. You
already probed him. The very beginning of the thing was a probe.
Oh yeah,
I stopped it. He does probe him too, but
so there's nothing.
That was at the very beginning. He was noting his entire hand, so he knew everything that his opponent had.
No, he probes him again here before it's over, and then does so. So
there's no way.
Even after the first one, after the first one, there's not really any reason to sit there and wait for them to respond.
Right. Yeah.
Especially because you know what deck they're playing, you know what's in their hand. Why would you sit there and do that?
Yeah, there's no reason. That's slow play. Even if you don't know how the deck works, waiting for a counter spell that's never going to come.
Yeah.
And just dragging it on and on. Hopefully, a lot of Storm players do that to get their opponents to concede before they have to finish it off.
It's got me at 6 minutes. We're going to show one more. Go ahead, James, with one more scenario.
I reveal it to this. Play Cletus in the past. Sure.
Creature. Is that permeating mass? Return me and fight. Get a plan? We had a lot of fun laying these scenarios out.
Fun or no?
Untap, sacrifice a forest, draw a card, draw a card.
The PT was only minimally distracting.
So what do we think about here? Are we slow playing here?
It doesn't seem to look like it.
Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable. I mean, this guy here goes in the tank for a second, but we kind of gonna let that reasonably pass. That PowerPoint back up, James. Yeah, some decisions, but yeah. So we see the difference between go to that scenarios. So we give. It's the one that says scenarios. Again, I stole that from Jeffrey Vandenberg from his 2016 slow play scenario. We're going to jump real quick. We got 5 minutes now. One more. So I said we talked about
after this. This doesn't have Q&A time. Q&A comes after this.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So you got 5 full minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. So now we're gonna. I said we talked about stalling. So the difference between stalling, like I said before, is there has to be an intent to abuse the game state, to use the clock to gain an advantage. But we do have to have an investigation where you again get to have a judgment call. You know, do you think he's doing it intentionally? Sometimes the player will say, "Well, I won game 1. This is game 2, and if I can get a draw here, I win." So I was, holding out. Some players will just straight up tell you, especially if you're good at asking questions. The thing to remember in an investigation is you don't have to be 100% sure. This isn't a death penalty. You don't have to have unanimous jury decision. If you're 51% sure that he was intentionally trying to gain an advantage, then write it up. That's my opinion. Some people may differ, but make sure you get statements from everybody because, a DQ, there's going to be some issues involved with the DQ. Make sure you give the player a copy of the DQ handout, which is available in Judge Apps, so they know what's going to happen after all that's over. Make sure you submit the documentation in the Investigations tab of Judge Apps. Judge Apps does everything now. That's what we had to do on the Judge Center is gone now. We do Judge Apps. And again, give the player time to talk and let you know what's going on, but ultimately it's your decision. And every slow play or stalling DQ I've done I've only done 2, has been ugly. I don't know about you guys, but it's not been fun. So, make sure you know what you're doing. But again, you don't have to have 100%. You don't have to have a death penalty. It's great if they say, "Well, I decided to do that." Then that's awesome. You're easy. You're good there. But you're not going to have an admission of guilt every time. So.
With the GP, or at a big event, they can appeal to the head judge, right?
Sure. This is going to be a head judge call. This isn't going to happen if you're a floor judge. So if you're the head judge of a PPTQ, or something like that, or if you move up and you're a head judge of Classic or something, this is going to be your call. At a large event like a Pro Tour or a GP or something like that, it's going to be the head judge's call, and all you really have to do is let him know what you saw, and then of course you're going to write a statement too. So, that being said, next slide, James. We'll take some Q&A.
So on the last point of stalling, I've seen scenarios where, for instance, game 1 takes 47 minutes to complete.
Okay.
And I've been told before that players are allotted 3 minutes for sideboarding. I know that number's changed a little bit, but let's say 3 minutes.
It's an arbitrary number now.
Okay, arbitrary number. Do players, can you give a slow play for sideboarding slowly, or would that be stalling? If it's just, because you have to present in mulligan and everything in 3 minutes after sideboarding. So
I think that 3 minutes thing went away.
Okay, sure. But I'm saying, so say there's 3 minutes left in the round, then. And like I said, we just finished game 1. So do both players have to make an actual effort to play the second game?
You mean if I won game 1, it took 47 minutes, and
yeah,
now I'm trying to play the game at all.
I played a match where I was playing against Mono White Devotion, and they decked themselves. That's how this game ended. It was 47 minutes, and you go to sideboarding, and then there's the side. You have to within the last 2 minutes of the round, you have to sideboard, present, resolve mulligans for there to be turns. Do both players have to make a
as long as you're making a reasonable effort to get there. Now, this is something I think that to make that call, you're going to have to be standing right there as a judge.
Well, yeah, obviously you have to be right there. That's what I was saying.
You can't go back and be trying to figure it out after the fact.
I was in the example. It was an open, and like I said, our first game took 47 minutes. There was 3 or less minutes on the clock when we began the sideboard, and there was a judge that watched your match because it was one of the last ones. And I looked at him, and he said that we didn't really have to go to game 2 because of the time constraint. I was like, do I have to? I was like, I asked him, do I have to sideboard and present? Because of the 3 minute thing, and I don't know. I don't know if
time on the clock. You're supposed to go to the game. You can't just, make a decision to there's only a minute left. We're just going to sit here. I don't think you can do that.
But I think as a player, you have to just go through the motions of this is what I would sideboard in this matchup, I guess, and then if you take on that too long, then.
So could the players just determine that whoever won, the first win, and then it was before sideboarding? They just say that was a 1-0 win for that person.
1-0 win.
That is how that would work.
1-0 is a win.
They say that though, and then not go to the sideboarding part.
I don't know
if there's only 3 minutes, they just think that it's not worth going to that.
I don't know if the person that lost game 1 is going to. I don't see why he would be on the same page.
Right. I was thinking, is it stalling for player A who won the first game in 47 minutes to, take their normal amount of time to sideboard and present, even though they know that it's to their advantage to look at the clock and say,
I would look at
less than 3 minutes.
Both players allowed the first game to go to 47 minutes, so there is that much of guilt on both sides. But the player that lost game 1, I don't see why he or she would.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying
they would be on the same page. I don't think they would agree to a lot, but if they did, if both players agreed to it, and they, you know, you got 1 minute, I still think you need to.
Well, I was saying, like, as player A, can I just be like, well, I have the sideboard, and then we have to still shuffle and present, so I'm going to take my time. That is stalling, correct? If I say, there's 2 minutes left on the clock, I want a sideboard, so I'm going to do that.
I think this particular question is too subjective.
It is
there's a lot of ifs there. You got to be standing there watching.
It's a game that I was in, and that's why I was curious how it was.
Jenna had her hand up back there first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, if that happens and then you talk to the player that win and you find out that their intent was to just take as long as possible on their sideboard, that's stalling, right?
Sure, that's very cut and dry. There's less variables than what he's talking about. So yes, that's correct.
If that scenario happens and you just take it to questioning, and
then you just say, hey, you know what's going on here, and we'll start the investigation for stalling. But a lot less variables in that scenario than.
I saw earlier in the show it said that there was a game loss. Is that for like if you caution to them?
The second violation of slow play for any player in a single tournament, since it's a tournament error, the second violation of any tournament error is upgraded to a game.
So when does it go to disqualification?
Unless you think it's stalling.
If you
they can get multiple games.
Well, I saw the previous line that said they DQ on it. So.
Well, DQ's on stalling. Yeah.
So if you had somebody who, like, 4 games, they got 2 TOs or 2 tournament errors for delay of game, you're kind of suspecting at that point they're probably stalling, which means they're cheating, which means it's a DQ. Because if they've done it consistently every game you've watched them play, or
you would think that, but you could also get there from players just not knowing how to play.
I mean, I mean, you would raise it. You would have to look at it and then maybe watch the match intentionally from there. But I mean, you're seeing a pattern. You're probably going to watch that player every time, or have somebody else watching them.
I can tell you this, and I'm not advocating for player versus judges, but time moves differently here than it does up here. Time moves a lot slower here at the table than it does for you as a judge above it. So you gotta, you know, if they're just constantly getting these warnings, it could be they're just not perceiving the passage of time. I'm not saying that it's going to always be the case, and you're not completely wrong. There could, you know, investigation could yield that they are stalling, but it's also not cut and dry. I mean, it could be. Men seems to.
Well, that's also self-correcting. If a player round 1 gets a slow play warning, round 2 gets their game lost, that match is going to end up, and probably a lot sooner because they are down a game. Round 3, they get another game loss. Again, that round's not going to, they're probably not going to use all their 50 minutes again. Round 4, they're going to get a game loss. Again, the round's not going to use that.
So every slow play after
all the play, it will correct itself.
Once you hit 2, it's game loss, game loss, game loss, game loss.
Okay, that was going to be my follow-up.
Yeah.
So once you've gotten one in a tournament, everyone proceeding after that is game loss.
Correct. It's game loss, game loss, game loss.
Well, they should correct the behavior.
If they like slow play but not stall, you just continuously hand them game loss.
Well, that's fair. I didn't know if they stack or get.
They'll learn. Winning a tournament with that many game
They
losses.
will quickly correct, or they'll just see how the tournament goes.
I would have said just 2-0 everything with slow play every round.
So this isn't necessarily related to slow play, but the game loss thing. Because when you give a warning to a player, at least at like a big event, you ask them if they've received another warning today, or any other warnings. And if they, like, either by forgetting or omission, don't forget to tell you, and you're like, okay, well, that's a warning, and then you write it down, and then later someone else will be like, well, they actually had a warning the round before, I guess they must have forgotten or lied to you, that was a game loss.
At the Grand Prix, a good scorekeeper will let you know, hey, these guys he had a warning before. And then if you're doing it yourself, you'll obviously know, you know.
Yeah, it's only really that bigger events, but at that point, I guess it would be an investigation whether or not they lied or forgot.
Yeah, okay. And this is only going to happen in a larger event because.
But I was just curious what happens if a player forgets and/or lies to it. I know it happens with a few lot of judges. They forget, like, oh yeah, I had a warning for that today, or if they didn't realize it was for like the same thing. Like, oh yeah, I had a warning for like this other thing. So.
It's what you would come to when you talk to them about it, because you find out you ask them, hey, do you have any warnings today? And they say no. So I don't ask them, hey, do you have any slow play warnings today? I always ask, hey, have you had any warnings today?
Okay.
And then if they say yes, you can say, well, what for?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Anything else? Yeah.
I often see slow play with newer players or veteran players, and I feel like
I have a hard time giving a slow play warning or caution in a way that helps things and it doesn't make things worse. If a player's slow playing because it's flustered, me coming up and tapping them on the shoulder, even if after they pass turn, like I have a hard time not making the situation worse by interjecting. And a large part of me just wants to sit back and just pray it goes away rather than interfering and making things worse.
So my suggestion would be to, it's not going to go away probably. And even then, you're doing the tournament a disservice by not issuing the warning in a second. And we'll, so there's that. But just do it quick. You don't have to get in there and have a, heart to heart. You just jump in there and say, hey, I'm giving you a slow play warning. We talk about it after the match. Please continue.
The other thing I don't like is like you only
quick, by pulling a band-aid. Jenna?
I just want to add to that, like verbiage really matters in that scenario. If you make it more about, so if you would talk to the player and say, I'm going to need you to play a little bit faster, this is just a caution for a slow play, and then let them continue after that, instead of saying, you need to play faster, it doesn't come off as combative and the players can accept that a lot better.
Can you do that verbiage again?
Sure, so if you say like, I need you to play faster, and this is a slow play caution, that goes over a lot better than saying, you need to play faster, because then they start being defensive.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how much time I have left for QA. Anything?
We're at the 150, but please, it's just a bathroom break, so if you got more questions, get them out. Yeah. There's only one bathroom break. So.
But overall, to that point, don't forget, you may feel sorry for that player who's flustered. He has an opponent, and they are probably getting annoyed or flustered, and it's unfair to them that this slow play is happening. So you have to remember that it's not just in a vacuum that this is occurring. One player, I'm not happy, I'm drawing the wrong things, etc. There's a second player, and at competitive rel and not F&M, we're making sure everyone plays fairly and everyone has a shot. And that's our focus.
Last one, and then you can talk to me.
On what Min said, that was the one thing I had to learn going from F&M to the bigger events is you're going to have the feel bads where you got to go down and just lay the hammer down on somebody. They're going to lose the game. It's going to be a game loss. There's nothing you can do about it. You're not there. It's something you have to struggle with, especially like SL1s where we're not used to being, being that difficult on people. You really just have to remember that you're just there to enforce the rules. You're not making the rules. It's not personal to this person because if it was Min playing or Ben playing or somebody you've never known, the rules are the same. You just sit down and go, look, this is what happened. Here you go.
Impartiality is the thing. You have to kind of pull your emotions out of it a little bit and just realize you're there to enforce the rules. That's what we're doing. I tell you what, appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. If you got more questions,
thank you.